Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Chase. I am your host, Christian Dyer, and I'm really excited for today's guest. He is a renowned sleep expert, speaker, and author, known for his groundbreaking work in the field of sleep optimization and recovery, working alongside some of the world's best teams and talents, including Manchester United, Team GB, Formula One. The list really does go on and on. Whether you're an athlete striving for that competitive edge or simply looking to enhance your sleep habits, this episode will be packed with insight. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. Nick, thank you for being here.
It's absolutely my pleasure, Christian.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm going through a good period of time in my life. A few challenges here and there, but the weather's good. Looking forward to the summer, and sport's a good place to be in.
Sure.
Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. So I'm good. Yeah.
That's incredible. Nick, it feels like, especially here in America, and I can't speak on other areas of the world, but there's so much competition to sleep less. Who can wake up the earliest? Who can continue grinding on less hours of sleep? And because for many people, they have this idea, this perception that means they're doing more, they're working harder, they're going to get this edge over their opponent. What's your take on this?
I think probably most of the clients and organizations I've worked with, that probably their first question is, how can we do this quicker, faster, and smarter? Because it takes up a lot of time and we don't feel we get enough benefits from it. So it's not surprising that our drive is to really optimize sleep and to be able to quicker and smarter. But I think we have to sort of remind ourselves that it is, it's like the circadian rhythms of the day. It's like the sun going around our planet. We are a human being. We should be more synchronized with that process. These sort of things never change. So it is really a balance. It's that rhythm to activity, mental and physical activity, and mental physical recovery activity. You need that balance because yes, of course, we can push the boundaries and records are being broken all the time and things like that. But in general terms, you've just got to be careful of how far you push yourself, even at the highest level. And I think that's the sort of challenge of the next few years, is to how to manage that a bit more, with a bit more consideration. Because for every one person who appears to be able to do what you described, there are millions who fail at it.
I think it starts with not just our approach to sleep, but it's almost our perception of sleep, our relationship with sleep. Because if you don't start with an understanding and understanding the importance of why, the benefits, and how vital it is, well, then we're never going to prioritize it.
No, it's I think that's one of the big, my sort of big challenge all the time is that perception. Because it's difficult to, you say sleep, and it's a health pillar that's at the back end of everything else. It's something you do when there's nothing else left to do. You don't feel you've got any control over it. You're obviously completely inactive when it's happening. So it's kind of frustrating because, your first hour of sleep didn't go very well. Can you do something about the next hour? No, because you're asleep. So that's the really frustrating aspect about it, because you're not actually in control of it while you're actually asleep. Your brain's took over. But that's the trick, is starting with that understanding about it is your brain and bodily functions and hormones and processes and a 24-hour rolling process. And it's about your behavior while you're awake that enables, when you get to get to that point, brush your teeth, put your PJs on, release yourself, brain takes over, and it goes, right, well, you've been doing this, 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 and this today. So all I can give you is this. So you're always looking to say, well, how can I help my other self? So there's this sort of physical, mental wake state, Nick running around doing stuff and everything. But there's also this other physical, mental Nick that spends 30% of its time trying to put all these things right or to recover from all these things the other one's doing. So it might be a weird thing to say, but it is sort of like that imaginary friend on your shoulder that is your brain. And you just go, how many things have I done today to help this other Nick?
Yep.
So that when I go into sleep, it's going to, have a good training session,
Yeah.
It's going to have a really good coaching session, or it's going to have a, to help it go and really benefit that period and optimize it,
Nick, why are you so passionate about this?
No idea.
Great.
I I love sport in my schooling years, my formative years, rather than studying or doing exams. I was able to do my studying and exams, but that was just in between doing sport. But that's the same for a lot of, young people. I rather than doing sort of going off to college or university to be a doctor or whatever, and I just took every opportunity to get into some sort of professional role in sport. But that's a long time ago. We're talking late 70s, early 80s now. So I did spend a bit of time, about 5 years, in a sort of professional capacity in sport. And it's about, I suppose it was when I was coaching, it was golf at the time. Not golf as you see it today. This was a different sort of golf. But it was sort of like being asked to coach somebody to play the game, and there was lots of facets involved in it. And sometimes you're just like, well, there's no definitive way to do this, so why don't we do it like this? So they've got this human being with some golf clubs and a golf course in front of them. So, well, we just need to get around the golf course, in as least strokes as we possibly can. And so it's kind of, I think there was a little bit of that. So when I fell into the sleep industry, and I spent many years in that, I was just fascinated by probably a similar concept. But look, there must be another way of doing this, because the way that I've learned doesn't work. We can obviously play this game better. We should be able to play this game. We should have some slightly different techniques and understand. So as soon as I started getting involved with sort of taking all the basic principles of what I learned, and then sort of in that sort of coaching sense, along comes Christian, and we go, let's explore sleep. And I go, well, let's look at that. Let's look at that. But we could probably do it a little bit like that. We could probably think a little bit differently there. Oh, that's absolutely amazing. And then their whole attitude towards it changes. And they stop worrying about it. It becomes a proactive thing. And then, you go and win the Masters if you're a golfer. And suddenly we go, hey, that was one element of everything else that we're doing that really helped me to optimize everything else I was doing. So it's all right having a great nutritionist and a great coach and a great training program and amazing equipment and a great sponsor and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're not recovering, a lot of those things are diminished. They don't fulfill themselves. So it kind of suddenly became, if I just spend a little bit more, not get serious about it, but just redefine that area a little bit better for me, it equals more productivity. It means you will get more out of everything you're doing. So I think the reason why I'm still remain passionate about it is because it's something that is helping so many people at all sorts of levels in life, wherever you are, from parents to people in sport to other sorts of areas, disabilities to mental health and well-being. There's so many areas that it covers, and it's really great to have something so simple, so practical, so achievable that somebody just go, I wish I'd known about this before.
Mm.
I actually think that I did know about it before. So it's kind of like I wrote a book. I got asked to write a book some years ago in 2016, and it was non-clinical, non-academic. It's not a self-help book. It's nothing like that at all. It's just a little pocket manual about my journey in sleep. And people read it and go, I read it and I thought, I knew all of this, didn't I? They kind of have that feeling like they knew all of this anyway. And they'll read it again and then suddenly run off and start making some little practical steps. So it doesn't like change their whole approach to it. They suddenly just become so much more confident about life. And that's why I'm passionate about it, because it's certainly not the financial rewards. It's certainly not that I'm doing it for any other reason. It's just a great subject that actually has such an impact. Such
No,
an
it's
impact.
it's
That's the
incredible.
bit.
And it's gaining so much traction, and you got the likes of yourself, Dr. Walker, you have Dr. Andrew Huberman, all
Uh-huh.
talking about the importance of this. And I probably can.
Which is amazing, isn't it? I mean,
Oh,
as people can tell, I'm sort of in my early 60s, but that means nothing these days. I've still got a 20-year-old up here. But it's absolutely amazing. The reason why I remain so passionate, as another answer, is that when I started out in back of the late 90s and I sort of I had to make it up. The media gave me my title as a sleep coach. I was moving from one project to the next, going bust, giving up. All that time, but everything, something else came along that just kept me doing it, right? And to see all of these people you mentioned and many others, and there's loads of people attaching sleep to their jobs, hypnotists, well-being experts, all that sort of stuff. It's amazing that focus is on that, which is great. But I would also sort of caveat a little bit, if you suddenly look at something that's always been taken for granted and then suddenly turn it into some big, enormous beast, whether it's, there's trackers out there, there's supplements out there, there's devices out there, there's all sorts of techniques out there, there's advice out there. Suddenly you've gone from sort of nowhere to massive somewhere. And I think everybody's role is to find out what's going to work for them within all of that. And sometimes they'll need a little bit of help, like a coach, to find their little journey through all that stuff. Otherwise, too much emphasis on a particular area takes you too far. Probably an example is that I was wandering around in the 90s and hydration was just, what's hydration? Then you turn into this, hydration is important. Then you turn into 2 liters of, water a day and all that sort of stuff, and the brain of the. And then suddenly you start to change eating habits and nutrition, and there's lots of good food in there that's got water in it. So suddenly you then move to overhydrating. And then you've got all these other aspects about hydration and smart waters. And so you've got a concept that hydration is important, and there's a way to do it, and there's a good balance around it in a nice, healthy, well-balanced way. But you can exaggerate it and go too far with everything. So I hope at this moment in time, it's just making sure that people are talking about it, they're able to do something about it. We are providing practical ways that people can do it, for nurses and surgeons and athletes and everybody to be able to take something from that and put it into their box, because not that long ago, everybody just took it for granted and had a very random approach. So I hope it's working for people rather than just making them more scared about it.
go back in the earlier days of this, the 80s and 90s, without the use of technology like, the Whoop on my
Uh-huh.
wrist, the iPhone, supplements and all the knowledge, what metrics, what was the baseline? How were you measuring improvements in sleep? Was it more from a subjective case? Was it writing down how I feel, how I think I slept, the hours I think I was in bed? Where was the data coming from?
Well, that's a good question. The answer is I can't remember because we didn't have it really. There was a type of data collection at the time, but it was very basic based on
Mm,
certain things. And it certainly wasn't on a personal sense. It was through technology on the training ground or something like that. It wasn't anywhere else. I think the I think the baseline for it is just that's interesting. Chronotypes. How does that affect things?
mm.
Well,
Can you
it
explain for everybody that doesn't understand chronotypes? Can you explain it?
um, it's literally I heard it a long time ago from grandparents and past about owls and larks, the birds, and morning types, night timers. And then as a sort of my journey in it, I was able to look into it. It's a little genetic twist. It's principally about a little gland in your brain called the pineal gland and some light receptors behind your eyes, and the production of serotonin. So it kind of what it does is your little gland might have a little hour to 2 hour phase delay in its reaction to light.
Mm,
Um, so what you get is you get this morning type. So they become very active. They're able to unsuppress all their bodily functions very quickly in the morning. So they're rushing off into the day because they feel so responsive. The PM has got this phase delay to that process, so they're they're not reaching that point until later in the first phase of the day. Sunrise to midday. They also have a little thing that sort of is a little bit of hiccup in their natural internal circadian rhythm. So because of that, they have this little kickstart, which means they can go on till midnight and beyond, feeling very creative and active in that period. So in a 24-hour period, you've got these two human characteristics where some people are naturally designed to be more active in the first two phases of the day and others more towards the back end of that 24-hour period. There's the in-betweener. That's not actually a chronotype. It's because you camouflage it, override it, and ignore it. So you become an in-betweener because of your occupation or whatever it might be. You just ignore it. So it's a little thing. So it's a bit like that, like you've just described. Back then, I was looking at a squad. They're in the training ground. They're putting their boots on, getting changed to go out training. And I just turn around to the physio or the medic at the time and just go, how fascinating that those six, they're definitely morning chronotypes.
mm,
They've already got the boots on. The others are still trying to tie the laces up. And they'll go, what's a chronotype? And we go, well, it's like that. Oh, I see. I'm one of those, aren't I? Suddenly, quickly a conversation will be had. Wow. Then one day, they decided to train in the morning and train in the afternoon, which they'd never done before. So suddenly, the data they were collecting in the afternoon to the morning, they saw little subtle differences. Christian in the morning, Christian in the afternoon. Hang on a minute. There's a little subtle difference here. That must be about that. So really, it was just like awareness was a baseline. Wow, we know this now. The next one was, whoa, look, 60% of the squad are clearly morning chronotypes and the others are night timers. Are we doing anything to help the night timers? Are we doing anything to help the morning? Oh, the coach is definitely a morning chronotype. Oh, his assistant coach is definitely a morning chronotype. Well, how strange that we only train in the mornings. Because the coach and the head coach and everybody, they want to go home in the afternoon and chill out because they're up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, oh, we could do something with that, couldn't we? We could definitely do something with that. So I think all it was just awareness.
Yep.
It was going, oh, that's interesting. Let's make a few changes. Then you see results. And suddenly in the training ground, because we did a few things with the PMs before they get to the training ground, we told them what to do when they're at home, when they get up and what they do. Exposure to light was a big one. And then we put some lights, in the actual changing room, which would create that balance for everybody. And then suddenly we're sitting there and just going, they've all got their boots on at the same time. Isn't that great? And so it was nothing more than just why didn't we look at that before? Now we are looking at it. It's starting to really see some benefits, and everybody's got a smile on their face. And we've made some little subtle changes in what we do. And then ultimately, like you mentioned, the first club I worked with went on and won a treble. So they won 3, an FA Cup, a Premiership in football terms, and a European Champions League final in one season. So it's kind of like, well, there must be something in that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Probably nothing as simple as that. We can track it these days, but it doesn't always make it right.
Well, it's funny because when I was reading your book, I was thinking about the trainings I have in the early part of the day, just say before noon, versus the trainings that start at 4:15.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate afternoon training. I love morning training.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to think maybe I can get a nap, or as you would say, a CRP before that afternoon training. And it just ties back to this whole awareness piece, understanding maybe where you operate best, what time of the day. This perception of recovery needs to change from it's time out, time not doing anything, to more so, no, I'm priming my body to then be better. And I think that's a big piece of this.
I think so. It's like, refuel, recharge, all these sort of, buzzwords that go about. But, it's a good place to start. Like you just mentioned it's recharging, to go to the next phase in your day. And you've read the book, so it's all about thinking in 90-minute cycles. And you sort of, well, when you start to look at it all like that, you go, well, I've got a training session in the afternoon. I know my chronotype. I know what I'm like. If it was in the morning, I'd smash it. But I've got to still be there. So is there something I could do in the cycle before that cycle that will protect that, and something when I come out of it? So it's not about stopping and changing everything that's going on, but it's just that wonderful awareness that is give Christian 20 minutes prior to that session at 4:15, right? In which case, when he comes out of it, you're going to see better results, and he'll be ready there tomorrow. He'll be able to do it again and again and again. If you don't, he'll start making excuses why you can't make 4:15. Or when he comes into it, he'll go, I've got a little problem with my hamstring. He'll come up with little tiny things that means I don't want to do it. I want to get away from that. I don't feel up to it. And I think, in sport and in life, those little sort of excuses that we have, those little white lies, those little things, particularly nowadays with our technology, is we can so instantly sort of cancel that, change that, or modify that because I just don't feel up to doing the training session today. Well, actually, you were. You just didn't have an approach to manage it better.
What could I do during that 20-minute period before training to prime myself?
It's, to state the obvious, it's practice, right? What happens is if you, as you know, within the book and the things we do now is basically you need an anchor point, to your 24 hours, which is your sunrise, right? We don't live outside, but it's your sunrise point in the 24 hours. You chop your day up into 16 90-minute cycles, and you get this nice rhythm of your day. So what you do is you can then focus on sort of how your recovery feels best. Could be 4 cycles nocturnally in 6 hours, or 5 cycles, 7.5 hours in these 90-minute slots. Not to confuse everybody, but the answer to your question is that every 90 minutes, I'm thinking I have a subconscious process about what a little tiny 2 or 3 minute CRP is for me. And that can be nothing more than just looking out the window, right? Because it's a visual sensory type of thing that just helps the brain, right? So I'm always thinking of those little bits. Because I'm a morning chronotype, I want to wake up early in the morning, because I can't stop that. But I don't want to be going to bed at 8, 9 o'clock, so at night. So I want to live in a 24/7 world. So I have allocate a shorter period at night, which is 4 cycles and 6 hours. It creates a little bit more space in the day, so I'm not trying to rush around, to get pre-sleep in and get my last meal in and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not thinking about 24 hours in a sort of, nocturnal sleep type of process. I'm just thinking about how I get my recovery in that 24 hours. So when it brings it back, is that I use a 30-minute cycle late afternoon, and that's when I allocate that time every day, right? It's not exactly at the same time. It's a bit like the siesta between 1 and 3. That's a polyphasic sleeping recovery period for human beings, or recovery state. You don't have to go to sleep. But there's another one late afternoon in a triphasic approach, right? So late afternoon, generally between 4 and 6, I'll always get that 20 minutes in. What am I doing? Nothing. What you do is if it
People
happens,
hate doing nothing.
I hate doing nothing. It's the most valuable waste of time you'll ever have.
Yeah.
And it's because it's there. If you think about the sun going around the planet, it's a rhythm, it's a pattern, it's a clock, it's a process. You can't change it. So there's certain bits of every 24 hours that you just want to synchronize with better. So if you're just saying, I'm going to give you, 30 minutes every afternoon, right? What happens is your brain is able to work in harmony with this rhythm. So it knows it's there for the sake of argument, right? So what happens is it'll give you a nudge sometime and just go, I tell you what, Christian, when we do that little 20-minute thing this afternoon, we're gonna snooze it out, right? We can fall asleep behind the wheel of a car on a motorway or an autobahn. That's nuts. We fall asleep on trains, in metros. We can pass out on the sofa. We can, it's kind of, I coach people to sleep anywhere, up the side of mountains, different hemispheres. So when you sort of get it into the concept, it's not about you trying to go to sleep. It's about creating the moment in the right places in those 24 where your brain will do it for you. You don't even have to do anything. So you might be learning, another chord on your guitar, your little acoustic guitar that you never get the chance, because there's never every time. But you just go 20 minutes. I'm just going to learn another chord. It's positive mind stuff. So it's not read a passage out your book. Listen to something, sit outside, go for a walk. Just you start to really identify with what your CRPs are. What are those little things? You've had people, and when you get into that place, then it just becomes subconscious. And when you get into that place, sometimes you go, oh, I tell you what, that little 20 minutes today, I definitely know that my brain's going to want to snooze it out, right?
Oh, 100%.
So you might just go and be somewhere a little bit more private, or you might sit somewhere, or you might do that, or you can just nod it out for 5 minutes, even when you're sat in a chair, because it happens. Like the graveyard slot in business, straight after lunch, there's everybody in the room, but half of them are not listening. They know everybody's there, but you've just drifted. So meditation, mindfulness, there's lots of things that you can start to bring. And that's why I say practice. If you keep that rhythm in, you allocate that time, and your focus is not about going to sleep, then it's not about napping, it's not about snoozing, it's not about packing it in. And I had just been coaching some NHL hockey players, and the coach there was saying, it's absolutely bonkers because half the team were just lying on the floor in the training ground. And he said, what their mindset, James, was, we're not doing it, we're just going to curl up. They've got the kit on, they're in the actual training ground, in the changing room, and they just curled up and just stopped doing something for 15, 20 minutes. And none of them are trying to do anything else. What they know they're doing is adding to what the whole process is about. And if you'd have seen that picture, you'd be laughing.
Yeah.
I'd be like, how embarrassing is that? They come off the court, they come off and they won, or they've got less injuries, or it was a great game, or they're smiling a bit better. They're looking forward to the next thing. So it's kind of just changing that whole concept of what it is and how it feels. And yeah, like you mentioned before about people, would just like to get a pill and do it in 20 minutes a day and that'll suit them. But, it's a really great thing of really understanding that you might be adopting a different approach to your recovery, but you're not. You're only following what's been natural to us as humans ever since we've been around. So it's going to make you better. It's always going to make you better.
And we need to be better at listening to our body and our mind. Because, like you mentioned, there's days I'll come home and I know, hey, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to nap.
Yeah.
So I set my alarm. But then yesterday before practice, I sat in my truck for 20 minutes and I just chilled. I mean, I scrolled through my phone. I had music on.
What's the point of asking me questions about what you do in the 20 minutes and you know the answer?
Well,
that's actually
I never knew that was. I thought sitting on my phone just relaxing was a waste of time. But now that you said it, it could be beneficial.
Absolutely, because all this sort of, get off your tech and all this sort of stuff type of thing. It's like, no. If I've got some nice visual on my tech, on my pad or whatever, and I'm sat somewhere and I'm just looking at something, it could be art, it could be music, it could be something that's all sort of helps me just like, oh, hang on a minute, 20 minutes has just passed. And it's all of those wonderful things. And what you just mentioned, that was a lot of things for people. You come away from the training ground and you jump in your car and you're going to drive home. Well, just sit in the car for 20 minutes before you leave the car park, or park up a couple of streets away from your home and have 20 minutes before you hit the driveway, And when you say some of the baseline measurements before, is suddenly that person walks through the door, has a great relationship with their partner and their family, has an unrushed, nice social evening, and gets far more benefits from it, just because they didn't go straight through the door with all the anxiety and crap that they brought with them from there.
Wow.
So that's what it does. It's amazing, because we all know that you can be having the worst day ever. I can be having the worst day ever. And if I just grabbed your arm and said, just walk out and let's go and sit by that tree or on that bench or anywhere, right? What happens quite quickly is life's not that bad, right? Because it might be outside, so our, exposure to light and serotonin starting to kick in or raise its level up. So we do know, don't we? That's what I said to you when people read my book, they go, I thought I knew that. Yes, you do, but you don't do it, do you? So if you just, for the sake of example of this, if you just step outside for a couple of minutes, it's amazing. The next 90-minute cycle is going to be productive. And then if it was quite a challenging one, step outside again, you know, or look at that again. And how amazing was your evening last night? So somebody will come walking in to me and just, you know, hey, you know what I did last night? I went riding with my friend and we went on the mountain bikes up onto the hill. Absolutely. What time did you get back? Oh, it was like at least 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then we had a bite to eat and a cold beer. Really? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why weren't you in bed getting your 8 hours? He said, well, when I got back home, I just chilled out. Didn't rush upstairs, just chilled out, you know, bowel and bladder and things like that. Put everything in context. Really enjoyed the day. Looked at the photos. Text my mate and say that was really great. And it's absolutely fine because I'm just taking 20 minutes midday today with my little 20 minutes this afternoon, which I always do anyway. So it's all cool. You know, so the sort of things just start to happen and it's nuts, isn't it? I mean, you just explained it there with just sitting in your truck or whatever. It's suddenly what you do is you're wandering around with an antenna that's about this recovery activity. And so everywhere you see a bit of light during the first phases, you just wander towards it rather than away from it. When you're inside, outside, whether you're over there, you suddenly go, oh, I've just met this guy, Christian, who's going to have an influence over my everyday approach because he's the new coach. And immediately I ask you 2 or 3 questions while we're having a drink and having a bite to eat for lunch. And I immediately know that what your chronotype is. So now I'm aware of how to manage and work with Christian rather than not, you know? And I'm able to sort of start to, you know, this whole training program you're going to put together, you know? Is there any chance you can create a 20-minute window in between those 2 sessions? Why? I'll show you why. And it's sort of as long as everybody starts to change their sort of behavior and their insights into what's going on, some of the most successful individuals and teams I work with, this is normal now. They have absolutely no problems with it. It all becomes part of their everyday approach. Because if I as a coach can allocate you that 30-minute period late afternoon, whether you do anything with it or not is up to you. But if I allocate it, then you can take it. So it's kind of that shift that's really important. But it literally is doing nothing.
Nick, how would
It's a long answer to your question, wasn't
it? That was a great answer. It was a great answer. But how would a PMer or a night owl, as kind of what we say in America, want to approach their mornings, and when they wake up, when they know they have, you know, a high cognitive function morning, they got to get a lot done, but they know that they're a night owl? Would they change how much exposure to light? Would they change maybe giving themselves a little extra time in the morning before they have to go to work or do whatever job they have that day?
Yeah. It's exactly that. It's what I think when there's a little sort of infographic dial, if people can have it into your head, you know, you put a cross, you've got 4 phases of about 24 hours in a circle. You can basically think like 6 a.m., 6 p.m., 12 a.m., 12 p.m., right? There's your little 24-hour 4-phase diagram. And then you sort of reflect on yourself and about your chronotype. In an ideal world, what would be your most consistent start to the day, your anchor point, your reset point, your sunrise? If you're sleeping outside all the time, you'd be woken up by the sun. Okay, so you find that. So maybe that is 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So there's your anchor point in that 24 hours. Maybe if you're a nighttime chronotype, that might be 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, when that bit would kick in. So you know that, don't you? So if you've got a morning chronotype, say with an anchor point of 6 o'clock, then that takes you on to 7:30, and then that takes you on to 9, right? The next 2 90-minute cycles. So the PMer's natural anchor point might be 9 o'clock. 2 cycles back is the AMer's natural chronotype start. However, we both do the same occupation. So we both got to wake at 6 o'clock in the morning. Right? So immediately your awareness as a PMer is your 2 full 90-minute cycles before you would naturally want to start your day. So you can't just start your day then like the AMer, because they in the first 90 minutes, they will become very active, bowel and bladder, hydrate, fuel up, do some little mental challenges. So by 7:30, they're proper ready for anything that's coming their way.
Yeah.
What you're going to do is by the time you get to 7:30, you won't have done a lot of those things because you're still sort of snoozing. You still don't want to get going. So I'm ready to kickstart my day at 7:30, fully active, but you still haven't opened your bladder. You probably have only just done a little bit of hydration, no mental challenges, not really been exposed to light. So you just can't do it because that's going to knock back. So it is like that. There's certain things you've got to do to be woken up at 6 o'clock. So something like I might not need something like a dawn wake simulator, a little light therapy lamp in my room, because I'm already reacting to the very little light that might be changing within my room if the curtains are shut. But you're not. So we need to get you a lamp. So the lamp will come on at 5:30. The lamp will bring this 10,000 blue light, daylight lux into the room gradually. When your alarm goes off like mine, I switch mine off, it wakes you up. But you're being stimulated by serotonin. So that'll get you able to get out of bed, hopefully. But then you move into the kitchen where there's another lamp. And that's producing the 10,000 lux, right? And that's continuing to increase your serotonin levels to move you towards that place. So it's not necessarily sort of having to wake up a lot earlier, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, because they still won't get out of bed. But it's kind of your start has to be something else, which is exposure to light. We've got to get that light into you quicker. If we start it from, if it doesn't happen at that sort of anchor point time, and you've got to go and switch it on in the kitchen, you won't make it to the kitchen. You'll just stay in bed. So it's kind of, we have to do something that triggers that natural response for you to start movement, right? And you're not going to be the decider of that. And it's sort of, long answer to your question, but you bring it right back to say you cannot start the day just like somebody else. You've got to do something, because if we've started it like that, then you're going to, and then suddenly get outside, right? If you can, depending on the seasons. And just have a little walk around the block and come back. Don't laugh, Christian. Do not laugh. But you can if you want. The way I changed, because you can't change a chronotype. You can camouflage it, ignore it, and everything. But if you want somebody to do something differently in a certain part of the day, I actually suggested to an athlete to get a puppy dog, a little thing with 4 legs, right? And you know what happens? Yeah, it's like, if you want to tell somebody they need to change their rhythm, don't tell them what to do, because they won't do it. You've got to help them do it, and suddenly they find out it's changed. So, of course, the puppy dog's got to go outside. It's got to have a wee. It's got to go to the toilet. It needs some breakfast. It needs a drink. It wants some love. So it was sort of like the puppy got the athlete out of bed. The puppy got the athlete outside before anything else happened, and maybe a little walk around the field or walk around the garden or something like that. And then when they come back, sort of, I want to have a bit of fuel up, bit of breakfast. I want a little drink, hydrate, and then bladder's easy, but then maybe the bowel opened up a little bit easy before they go out the door. So it's kind of, it's not a great example, but it's one of those little things of finding a way of, you understand what your chronotype is. There's no point trying to have 15 buckets of high caffeine energy drinks while you're still lying in bed trying to get yourself going, right? Or piling it on as soon as you wake up. You've really got to understand that you're not reacting to that part of that day like that, and you need a bit of help to get you out. And like you mentioned, the biggest one, the only one, is light exposure. It's but not the stuff you got around your house. I mean, of
No,
course, where I can see where
keep
you're
going.
sitting right now with your microphone in your office. Maybe not, but there's a little thing I started to do with a lot of people, which I can explore with you if you want. But the light levels where you're sat right now are all about producing a hormone called melatonin, which is telling your brain to suppress you like mad when you're actually trying to concentrate on doing this podcast with me. So it's a fight.
Really?
Yeah.
How's that?
Well, when you mentioned it before about PMs and stuff like that, and it was all about blue light's bad for you off your device. It's going to keep you awake all night. So wear blue blocker glasses. Blue light, serotonin is going to keep you. I mean, the main thing was about managing your exposure to tech and what sort of things you're doing on your tech running into a sleep thing. If it's aggressive and challenging, then that's not good. If it's good, visualization, sensory stuff, watching a nice film or something, or that's not so bad. So it's not about the tech or the blue light. So I just got a bunch of young athletes because they're all going, we're getting shouted at for being up late and being on our tech, and well, let's just look at a better way of managing it. So we got a little light meter on the App Store, just a little free one, just using the camera on the phone. And it was just a little way to give somebody an idea of what this is all about. So you get this little dial on your thing, and it just says lux. So what's lux? Well, lux is lumens and daylight and blue light, and it creates this. So I like blue light, don't I? Yes. Plenty of it the right times of day, better function. So they go, oh, look, I'm sat in Christian's office and it's hardly 380 lux. Well, let's go by the window. Now it's 3,000 lux. It's only an arm's length away from where I'm sat. Now it's like 3,000. If I just put it the other side of that glass, it's 80,000 lux. Now, what's all that about? 80,000 within a meter of where I'm sat. Difference. Well, maybe we know your average exposure should be around 10,000 lux in the first two phases if you're outside. So your average exposure about that. So if you sit somewhere that's in the low hundreds for an hour or so, then that's what's actually going on. Oh, wow. So when you mentioned what do you do in that little 20 minutes or those little CRPs, is what happens is that those kids, these young athletes, are just going, I'm just going to stand by that window when you're talking to me, or I want to sit by the window in the training ground, or I just want to step outside and come back in again because I know I'm getting recharged and I can feel it. Anybody who, whatever you do is that's how you sort of get somebody to the point as a PMer. There's no way you're getting out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, 2 full cycles before your natural wake, your natural start to the day at night. It ain't going to happen, right? You need to expose yourself to at least a sharp hit of 10,000 lux. You can't get outside because you won't get out of bed. So I've got to get you out of that bed and into that kitchen and then hopefully outside. And the only way we're going to do that is by getting you exposed to light. So that's why we're going to put this lamp in your room. They got absolutely fine. I know what it's doing now, and I know how Merrick works. I was in a CrossFitters in Knoxville, CrossFitting shed in Knoxville. And they go nuts, don't they, the CrossFitters? And this was an old corrugated shed in Knoxville, round the back in an industrial state. and they're piling away like mad. And we did this little trick of wandering around because they got all the lights and everything else. And I said, I don't know why you're trying to do that in that level of light, because it's too much of a challenge. You don't feel it because you're like CrossFitters, yeah. But if you change that light, you'd probably do everything so much more efficiently. So when you say about, people who just want to do so much and push their boundaries and sleep as less as possible and all that sort of stuff, is they're not really that efficient, right, in what they do. And that's and so in time, that inefficiency of your approach will come back to haunt you, right? Because there's certain behavioral things that you will start doing in that endeavor to push it right over the boundaries without an efficient approach to performance and recovery. And what that means is that you will be always becoming less resilient to stuff. And then ultimately there'll be things that will come back and haunt you.
What I want to talk about sleeping environments. And from everything you've learned working with some of the best athletes, just if you could aggregate all of the environments, the conditions, the temperatures, the lighting, maybe even types of beddings, whatever it may be, what is the ideal sleeping environment?
You like asking big questions, don't you?
Well, you're a big person, big time sleep expert.
The thing that I've always learned is that in trying to keep it concise, right? I used to work for a company that made sleeping products, right? And I was the big guy in charge of it, and so I would design stuff and everything else. And a lot of things, and particularly out in the US, it's big, fancy, thick mattresses with lots of stuff going on and fancy pillows and yada yada, right? When I started working in sport, it's like, well, how are we going to sleep in this hotel in Beijing? It's nothing like at home. How are we going to sleep on a grand tour like the Tour de France? When we're in a different hotel every night for 3 weeks, and we're doing 200K every day on bikes. Serious stuff. So what's that bedroom like to this one? So when you start to look around, and you also think of humans on our planet, right? The northern hemispheres and southern hemispheres, our ability to be able to sleep anywhere, on anything, in any way. When you look at humans on this planet, so in certain parts of the world, you can really focus on this, what's called a bedroom. And it's only a bedroom when you put a bed in it. So many people don't sort of focus. All I think has always been apparent, because I've actually, instead of using a hotel, we've actually put everybody in tents in the grounds at the back. Why? If you like camping or you don't like camping, anybody who's listening to this will be aware that when you go out into the mountains, when you go near the coast, when you go out, taking some time away, and there you are in a tent with just a zip and no security. There you are on the floor, basically, maybe something that's a bit inflatable. What happens is you sort of wake up with sunrise because there's no blackout. The sun's just piling in through your tent. So you wake up, you're immediately sort of have some breakfast because you're going to enjoy the first part of your day. Then you'll stop midday and fuel up and hydrate and take a little chill out. And then you'll go again and the sun will set. And then you'll sit around the fire, play a few tunes. The AMers will fall into a sleep state and the PMers will do that an hour later. Right? The AMers get up in the morning and make breakfast, because they're just a little bit earlier than the PMs. Then everybody gathers together and off they go, right? So when you're doing that, life just feels so much more manageable, so much more in balance. Challenges that come along, you just deal with. Negative things, that come along in your day, or positive things, you take advantage of them, or you just deal with them. So I think it's a good example. All you do is whatever environment you choose or ask yourself or have to sleep in, the first priority is thinking outside in, right? the outside, not the cold, the rain, and that sort of stuff. But what you're trying to do is create more of a natural familiarization process within that environment. So the colors, the smells, the security, the sort of feeling, the temperature, all that sort of stuff. You wouldn't naturally. So what you're really trying to do is, and you bring in your knowledge and awareness to that environment. So if you've got this knowledge about polyphasic sleeping and R-night and what you're doing recovery wise, then literally you can sleep anywhere, because what you do is able to look at your room and say, well, that's counterproductive, that's counterproductive, that's counterproductive. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to allocate 2 90-minute cycles to that room, and then come out of it, do something else recovery oriented, then go back and do another 2. I don't want to allocate a lot of time trying to sleep in there because it's negative to me, right? So when you go to a hotel, when you go anywhere, and including your home, it's really good to sort of imagine if you take everything out of that room, in your head, and then only start to put back into it what you would deem to be something that will help you and your brain go into that sleep state, roll through these cycles, develop these deep sleep stages, which is only 20% of any sleep period anyway, so that's easily lost. And then think, do I want to put that back in there? That other thing that's not like that, or that other thing, including human beings. I think there's the bedroom, and that's where I go with another human being to the private sanctuary, the boudoir, all that sort of stuff that goes on. But actually, with all the comfort and the sex and the security and the spooning and all that sort of stuff that we love with other, we'll just turn away from each other and just create our own little space and say, I'll see you in, 4 or 5 hours. I don't want that other person being aggravating. Me and Christian sleeping outside all the time. You'd curl up under that tree and I'd curl up under that tree. So it's kind of, whenever you're looking at your room, no fancy mattress or fancy pillows or any other types of things is going to protect you from your approach, from your anchor point of the things that you've been doing throughout your day. That 20 minutes in your truck, that little bit there takes the emphasis of trying to get all of your recovery in one block that you've allocated 8 hours to it, because it doesn't matter how many hours you allocate to it. It doesn't mean to say you're going to sleep through it and optimize it. So once you get that shift, you might just put a plant in the room, in a pot. You might just take some of those books off the shelf. You like reading before you go to bed and all that sort of stuff. But what are you reading? Because maybe, why are they there? And sort of, well, which way is the windows facing? Well, we never checked that when we moved in here. But the sun's never going to come through those curtains because we're facing east, So how do we deal with that? Maybe we could do this. Maybe we could do that. And ultimately, I think everybody should, because I do quite a bit of some funny projects sometimes, and people designing houses and all sorts of places and training grounds, and things move on quite quickly, and we've got AI coming in every left, right, and centre, so it's just fascinating. But it is a little bit like, if you think of, there's your bedroom, which is the first space, and you go into that space and you do all those lovely things you like doing in bedroom, right? But behind that space is 2 rooms, and it's one for you and it's one for them. And inside that room, it's completely white. It's cooler than the rest of everything else. It's got a system in it that brings that daylight in half an hour before you want to wake up. It does it automatically in a circadian way. It's got some product in there that you just lie on in a fetal position on the opposite side to your dominant side, curled up, bang, no pillow, just release into it, physical, mental, bang, boom, and you do it for 4 cycles in 6 hours. Open the door, meet your partner, who's also had a very refreshing night, and the day is very productive. So I think you just have to think about how much pressure you put on the bedroom as being the thing with products in it that will satisfy your requirements as a human being to get a good night's sleep. And I go, no, 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 no. I've got athletes hanging off the side of a cliff. When they went up there as professional mountain climbers and they got so far up, the weather changed. It does do this, even where we plan it like mad. It just shifted and they got stuck there for another 7 days. They couldn't come down and they couldn't go up. So they were there hanging in canvas. But they were fine because they've got this. Then that 20 minutes that they were doing in the truck down on the ground comes in real handy when you adopt a multiphasic sleeping approach, like somebody who sails around the world single-handedly in a race for 3 months, and they're on their own on a boat, and they can only get moments of like 26 minutes of recovery. They have to go back to the back on deck. So the only reason they were able to keep going is because they just wandered into a completely polyphasic, multiphasic recovery approach that every couple of hours they would just mindset it out, even though they're still sat there. They wouldn't keep chatting, they wouldn't keep trying to worry. So it's sort of, I don't know whether I answered your question, but I'd take everything out of your room. Think of the outside in as much as you can, in colours, in environment and everything else. Keep it uncluttered. If you've got a partner, try and get the biggest mattress you possibly can so you can get away from them. Don't think that products, because of all their marketing bullshit, I sleep amazing for a week with my grandkids in a tent on an inflatable thing that's about 3 inches thick. You know what I mean? It's like, it's that kind of mindset. It will not, it shouldn't be a place that you put under so much pressure, because by doing that, you create that anxiety that I'm going to bed in my bedroom and I wake up in the morning unrefreshed and have to do it again. So what's this bedroom all about? So it's a sleeping recovery room, right? It's like an altitude tent. It's like a cryotherapy unit. It's like going to see the osteopath to get somebody to sort your back out and fix you. Think of it as like it's a room where I go to rejuvenate, to renovate, to recharge, to put things in place for me to go again. And that's that room, just like I can think of other rooms. Now, it also has to be a private sanctuary. It also has to be a boudoir. It also has to be somewhere where private things, yes, that's fine. But get that mindset that what you're actually trying to do when you go into that space is achieve that. And just how many things that are in that room, which is going to stop that happening. Right? And then you sort of can be I've actually had people that sort of use the bedroom as a lounge and use their lounge as a bedroom, simply because there was an area up that they could take advantage of the light and it was a bit cooler, or like a bunk bed. Stupid thing, but it actually is warmer as you go up in a room. So take the bed frame away and put something, a little thin layer on the floor, and it's a bit cooler down there. It's that whole sort of concept of what am I trying to get your room to 16 to 18 degrees. It's cooler to warmer. Well, if I'm in a warm room, it's going to be cooler down there, at least. So get on the floor, Anyway, I'm too passionate about it, but it's that sort of thing, It's looking at it in a different perspective.
And what I've taken away from this entire conversation is
I'm nuts.
No, what I'm saying is what we do during the day has so much more of an impact on our sleep than we give credit to. And then you just mentioned going to the beach or camping. We have a beach house up in Northern California, and my mom will text me, I get the best sleep ever when I'm there. And I know for a couple reasons. Number 2, doors open, fresh breeze, it's cooler, immediate light in the morning from the sunrise.
Yeah.
They see the sun setting.
Yeah.
they're watching the sunset. That's priming. Obviously, there's red light, there's less blue light. And
Uh-huh.
then the pressure throughout the day is different. There's less distractions. If she
Yeah.
wants to take a nap, she sits on the couch, she rests her eyes for an hour, half an hour,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And it's just the entire day is different than when we're home in
Yeah.
Sacramento. Like, and if I'm right, it's just understanding maybe some of the stressors in our life, changing the relationship with those, maybe finding ways to release some of the pressure and stress.
I think what you're describing is great. And you asked me the question before. I was basically having a lot of these conversations with myself, and nobody's listening, right? But there were a few people. There was a few people, who would keep me going over the last 20 odd years. And listening to you say that is just how rewarding is that? Because what you're doing is correlating something we all know. We've all known it. Your mom's parents knew it. Their parents knew it. Is that there is synchronization, right? There is at a particular time, we were so synchronized to the sun going around our planet, creating these four phases and that rhythm to the day. And when that happens, and that happens. And there's lots of biological functions and everything else going on at the same time. It created space, it created recovery moments. It was all very natural. And then what do humans do? They're not smart. So they create things like daylight saving time in certain countries, which is nonsense. They shifting our exposure to light. They create technology, which is amazing, but also scary because it creates this 24/7 demand on us and everything else. We stop doing certain natural things. So we get really focused on exercise and gym and nutrition. Well, in your mum's world, that all just happens in a really healthy, balanced, natural way, which is what any coach will want you to do. Have a healthy, natural, balanced diet. Don't go off in the extremes. So all of those things are just there. So all you say to yourself, which we mentioned before, and how you were describing it, it's not an ideal. It's not something that's perfection. It's just we all know somebody who's probably got that, or we could read about it or listen to it like on here. And you go, let me just look at what's going on in mom's world, right? And you just described it. And you can very quickly understand her exposure to light. You can expose the rhythm of her day. You can see the sunrise, and that's a different type of light because you're already thinking amber light, red light, yellow light is not blue light, which is that. So she's getting a natural melatonin flow. She's getting a natural serotonin flow. She's sort of eating in a rhythmic way because of that. She's using those little downtime moments because she can. She just sits down. The brain says, well, let's snooze it out, and off you go. So all you do is, all my technique was ever about, all the books about, anything else I've ever done, is just how far are you away from that? Because we can't all have those things in place. But you just say, it's a bit like the bedroom, as I said, outside, inside. It's a bit like your rhythm in the day. How are you doing anything at all to get you closer to that ideal? Because you'd love it to be like that every day. How fast would you go if you live like that? How much more productive would you be if you go like that? How many less of that would you be doing and more of this? Just how much more functional as a human being, happier as a human being you would be. You'd probably invent things you never thought you could invent. You could probably change your direction because you have the confidence to do so. It's just a different type of human being. And yes, I'm in elite sport. Well, that's how you find the elite athlete that will do this. It's very marginal, isn't it, Christian? You got these really top athletes, all like that, smashing the personal best. But how do you just get somebody beyond that and out of the shadow of that and into a place they never thought existed? And that could be just how many games they play in a season, how many less injuries they get, how they're coping with all the other things is success. It's not just about winning. So there you just say to yourself, how far away are you from what you just described? And if you wake up in the morning with your anchor point and you're thinking every 90-minute cycles, can you put some of those little things in your own little way? They'll all aggregate up into an overall approach that you have for yourself. You know, it's the way you go about it within the framework of what we know. And you'll get a little bit closer to what your mom experiences on a day-to-day basis naturally, because she didn't make that up. It's available to us all. You know, it's available to us all. You don't have to have some fancy house or fancy beach house. You know, we've all got an outside and an inside and a 24-hour clock, and we're all humans. Just how far are you away from that? And if you can just if you think that people hear it all the time, you know, a third of your life, it's 30% 8 hours a plus of every 24. That's a lot. We probably don't do anything else other than breathing that takes up that much time. So I would like people to sort of think, I'm not happy with that now, because I want to go into that 30% and I want to get 5% back from me. I want to go in there and maybe it could be 10%, it could be 20%. I'm not trying to nick it away and sleep less, but I want to optimize that period better. I don't want to just allocate that time to it without trying to get more from it. And the way I get more from it is to go and see my mom, because she makes me happy. Spend some time at the beach house by the coast, resynchronize myself for a few days, come back, feel the intimidating Houston environment that I'm living in, and realize how much that puts me under pressure, and realize then I can't go and see my mom and sit in that beach house every week, but I can certainly take 20 minutes out, late afternoon, look on my device, see the beach, see the coast. I can listen to the sounds of that coast. And that's a 20-minute CRP for me, because I just transport myself to that
No,
environment.
Nick, today
And I'm
this was
still sat in my
special.
room.
This was incredible. And what I loved about it so much is you don't have one solution for every single person. There's not a magic pill. There's not a magic bed. There's not a magic diet. The first step is just changing our relationship, our perspective on sleep, and understanding that it's a lifestyle. It's 24 hours during the day.
Yeah.
And I think if we can buy into that
Yeah.
then become a little more aware of whether it's our chronotype, whether it be what stress is in our life, whether it be what things actually make me happy, things that I can just do on a day-to-day basis that bring me a little bit of joy, give me a little time out of my day, take me out of the pressure, take the stress out of my life. That's resting. That's another form of recovery, another form of sleep. So stop putting the pressure to get in bed by 9 o'clock, wake up at 6, hit your perfect 8 or 9 hours, whatever it may be, and anything less of that is detrimental. It's so wrong. And I think today scratched the surface of that. And I'm so grateful for you being here and exploring this.
I think so. I think, sometimes doing these, I pick and choose my podcast these days, because just we went podcast mad. I was just getting bombarded, and it's just like, hang on a minute, you actually want an audience that would be, a good person, so we can help people, reward them. It's not just a chit chat. They're going to go, oh, I need to do this new technique. And I think the lovely thing about the way you've gone about it is that's exactly what people want to hear, because I do not have to invest in a new gym membership. I do not have to go and invest in some new clothing. I don't have to change my diet. I don't have to do anything at all. All I have to do is reflect on where your mom lives and think, I can do it right now, this afternoon, come straight off this podcast and just go, I'm going to start, my behavior is going to change. Because, when you asked me about bedroom, if I had a picture of the coastline and the area where your mum lives on my wall in my bedroom, that'd be a nice thing to go to sleep with, wouldn't it? Because it's sort of like, you know, wow,
Yeah.
that's a cool place, isn't it? You know, that's a nice coastline to look at.
Mm-hmm.
That's some nice sounds to listen to in my headphones while I'm trying to drift off to sleep.
Nick,
You know, it's those sort of things that really work.
where can people find
do
you
work.
and continue to learn?
The easy place, it's Sport Sleep Coach. Sport, no S, sportsleepcoach.com. It's very simple stuff. I have a lot of blog posts on there with some great stuff, easy self-coaching learning stuff. There's some videos, TED Talks, things like that, if people like to listen to stuff. A cool place to go is get hold of my book. It's called Sleep.
Yep.
It's not going to tell you what to do. You've read it. It's an easy 90-minute read, and you sort of go, I'm off on this. But you can listen to it on Audible. There's an audio course on the website. It's like me going through 10 little courses. You can just download the files, listen to them when you want. It's a nice little step forward. We've got, there is some one-to-one coaching stuff, which I have, and team coaching and workshops. But I think for anybody, I'd really sort of say, don't do nothing, right? You'll get something out of this podcast. I have. The way you are explaining some of the things you may have learned through me or whatever. But I'd definitely read the book. I'd read the book. I'd read the book in combination with any other high-profile sleep books that are out there that may be a bit more clinical, a bit more informative on research and everything else. Absolutely valuable. But my book's designed to help you get to your mum's beach.
What a beautiful way to end it off.
A bit more often, right?